Hi everybody, my name is Fred. Welcome to Personal Time Outdoors. This video is the debrief video for my Minister Creek hiking trail trip. If you haven't seen that video, I will link to it at the end of this video, so be sure to check that out. I did a overnight backpacking trip at Minister Creek about 2 weeks ago, and in this video I'm going to give you all the details that you might need if you decide that you would like to do this trip yourself. Now, Minister Creek is in the Allegheny National Forest, and it's located approximately 23 miles from Tionesta. It consists of 3 intersecting loops, so you can use the different loops to vary the length of your hike, and there are some great options for camping and backpacking there. The U.S. Forest Service rates this trail as moderate to difficult, so there are some strenuous uphills and there are some water crossings to be aware of. If you're hiking at Minister Creek, you want to make sure that you're wearing appropriate clothing and footwear in light of these trail conditions. I'm going to show you the map here so I can kind of demonstrate how the hike went and how the trail is laid out. This is the current U.S. Forest Service map for the Minister Creek hiking trail. You can easily find this online if you just put Minister Creek hiking trail in your favorite search engine. You'll find the U.S. Forest Service website, and they've got this available to download. Now, as you can see here, the trail system consists of 3 loops. You've got this main north loop, which goes all the way up around this way. You've got a shorter middle loop that goes right through the center area of the trail system. And then you've got this south loop over here. The north loop, it says it's 6 miles, the middle loop is 2 miles, and the south loop also 2 miles. I'm pretty sure that those distances are measured to and from the parking area. So in other words, if you were going to just take the south loop, hiking from, in this direction here, up around the loop and back to the parking area is going to be your 2 miles. Now the parking for the trail is kind of actually across the road. You've got Route 666 here. Let me zoom in here so you can see this a little better. Route 666 here, and as you can see, there's a parking area here kind of across the street. The road kind of takes kind of a big loop right here. And then directly across the street, you've got the Minister Creek campground here, and you've got the entrance to the trail system as well. Now this campground, it only has 6 sites, and when I was there, most of the people that I saw were camping with campers, but you could definitely tent camp there as well. Now there is a pit toilet at this campground, so that's kind of a nice amenity if you do decide to camp there. But one thing to note that the sites there are on a first come, first served basis. You don't have any way to reserve those online or anything like that. They have one of those self-registration kiosks where you fill out a form with your name and information and you deposit it along with your money. At the time of filming, it was $12 a night, but that could change, so definitely check the website before you head out. I should also mention that there are some additional camping areas behind the parking lot. These are strictly primitive sites. When you're in the parking lot, you'll see a sign that says that camping is permitted a certain distance behind the parking lot, and you'll see a trail entrance. If you take that trail, you'll be walking kind of along the creek here, and you'll see a bunch of established sites where you can go ahead and camp. One thing to note that if you do camp in these sites, it is free, so you don't have to pay like you do over in the main campground. But it is strictly primitive camping. There's no latrine or anything like that on this side of the road. Now I hike this trail system in a clockwise direction. And what I did is I hiked from the parking area and I followed the trail up this direction here. And when I got to this juncture here, I followed the south loop in this direction, continuing in a clockwise direction. And then I worked my way up to the overlook. After I got done checking out the overlook, I continued on the north loop in this direction here and went all the way up to this area where I found a place to camp. Now there's a lot of good campsites up here in this area here where these 3 streams meet, right in the area by these 2 bridges. So whatever direction you're coming from, when you kind of hit these bridges here, that's when you want to start looking for a campsite, at least if you want to camp in the area where I did. In this bridge here, this one that's kind of on the more eastern side of the trail, when you cross it, or when you're on this side, the eastern side of this bridge, look down along the stream this way and also this way, and you will see a bunch of campsites. Additionally, there's some camping along this stream here, so that could be an option for you as well. I will leave the GPS coordinates for the campsite that I used in the video description if you want to have that, but you really shouldn't have any trouble finding one in this area at all. When you are up here in this northern section, you'll notice that you've got the North Country National Scenic Trail coming in from this side and from this side as well. So when you're in between those two sections of the trail here on the Minister Creek Trail, you're going to see the blue blazes of the North Country Trail. So don't let that throw you off. The blue blazes are the ones that you want to follow, at least until it splits back off, whichever direction you are going. Something to definitely be aware of. On day 2, I continued out of my camping area, and I continued along the North Loop, moving in a clockwise direction. Now you will come across this little trail here. It's called a Deer Lick Trail. I've not really hiked down there. I don't know if there's camping in this area down here, but I can tell you that it is a pretty steep downhill. So if you did get down here and you didn't find anything, you would have a pretty good uphill to hike back up to the trail. So keep that in mind if you decide to check that trail out. Now when you come to this area here where there's another bridge, you're going to find that there are some primitive campsites right along the creek, right along this area here. So those could be an option for you. They are closer to the parking lot. So you might want to hike in from that direction and camp there, and then maybe day hike some of the trails as an alternative. One thing I would like to point out is when you get to this junction right here, you have an option of taking this connector trail back up to the middle loop, or you can take this fishing trail here. I took the fishing trail. This is a really steep uphill to get back up to the middle loop, and the fishing trail is way more scenic anyway, so I would definitely recommend, if you're going the direction that I did, take the fishing trail back out, and it will dump you off right in the campground here. One other connector that I would like to point out is this connector here. You could, if you were hiking the same way that I did, you could eliminate this south loop if you wanted to, and you could take this connector trail straight up to the Minister Creek Outlook. But again, this is another one of those sections of trail that's a really strenuous uphill. You've got an uphill either way, even if you do take the south loop. But the south loop is really a lot more scenic, and I would highly recommend it. You'll pass a lot of really neat rock formations, and also that's where that slot canyon is, that first slot canyon that you see me hike through in the video, and that's definitely something you probably won't want to miss. In either case, you will end up at the overlook, which is something you don't want to miss. Definitely check out the overlook while you're there. That is the high point of the trail for sure. The trail is marked with these silver diamond blazes that are attached to the trees. And some areas of the trail are marked better than others, so I do recommend that you have a GPS with you, because it is easy to get off trail, especially if there's a lot of leaves on the ground. There are a few other trails that come into the area, so you don't want to take a wrong turn. Now, there is no cell service in this area, at least not with Verizon. I have Verizon, and I did not have cell service, so whatever GPS device or app that you use, you want to make sure that it is something that you can download the maps to use offline. I made a GPX file for myself that I used when I was on this trail, and I'd be happy to email that to anybody who would like a copy of it. All you need to do is copy me at the email address that's listed in the channel description. Now, this trail can be a little technical in places. There are plenty of roots and rocks that you do have to walk over. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some stream crossings. Now, most of those stream crossings are small, but there is definitely one that's pretty much a full-blown creek that you do have to cross. So you should be prepared for that. And chances are you're probably going to get your feet somewhat wet. Unless you're there in the really dry weather and the creek is low, you might be able to find a way across without getting your feet wet. If you don't want to backpack this trail, you could do it as a day hike. there are a few different camping options available to you. First off, you have the first come, first served campground that is right at the trailhead. But if you can't get one of those sites, you could always utilize one of those primitive sites that I mentioned that are behind the parking area. The other option you have is to hike in on that fishing trail that comes in out of the back of the campground. And there are some primitive sites along the creek on that fishing trail. So you could, take advantage of one of those sites and then day hike from that point as well. There is plenty of water on the trail, but you definitely do need to filter it. You'll come across several streams and little tributaries where you should be able to find the water that you need. But like I said, make sure that you filter it or treat it. It's not something you would want to drink as is. Now, with the exception of the 6 campsites that are in that campground at the trailhead, all the camping at Minister Creek is strictly primitive camping. So when you find a site, basically all that's going to be there is a fire ring. So there is no latrine at any of the primitive sites, unlike the campground. So you do have a latrine at that campground that you can utilize if you are able to get a spot there. Now, if you are using one of the backcountry campsites, you should be well versed in the leave no trace principles. So be sure to check those out and familiarize yourself with those before you leave on the trip. Now, technically, in the National Forest, you can make a campsite wherever you like, but part of the leave no trace guidelines state that you should only use established campsites, ones that people have already created, and that's just to minimize the impact. You don't want to see campsites just everywhere. It's a beautiful area, and we'd like to keep it that way, so please just stick to established campsites when you find them. You should have no trouble finding a campsite. I was there on a very busy weekend, and I had no trouble finding one at all. So you may have other people near you, but that's okay. I mean, there is enough of a buffer between the sites where you're not going to feel like they're right on top of you. This trail is ideal for beginners or for young scouts. The mileage is very manageable. Now, the loop that I did was only about 6 miles, and the camping area was about halfway point, so you're only doing like 3 miles a day, so it's totally manageable even if you're wearing a heavy pack. The scenery there is beautiful. There's some very interesting rock formations that you walk through and that you walk alongside of, and the overlook is really nice too. So I definitely recommend this trail, so be sure to check it out if you have an opportunity. Thanks for watching today, and if you have any other questions about the Minister Creek Hiking Trail, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Have a great day.